Hello. So it's a great pleasure to give a talk, although I was not scheduled to give a talk, but apparently Nikos likes me so much that he said, can you do this fire chat and all? And since I always have a talk or a joke to make, I'm going to talk about one of the jobs I'm doing at the Genome Center. And if I could get the slides, please, that would be great. So let me start with, if the slides come. I know that slide by heart. Okay, so while the slides are coming, first of all, I got a lot of people that ask me, what are you really doing in life? And I say, I don't know. But I have a slide that summarizes this, which is the second slide. I've been fortunate enough to work in different domains of science, and I have an attention disorder syndrome that has been diagnosed when I was 12. Which is the reason why I love things come from computer science to biology to even ethics, which most people think it's something to put on the side. It's actually the most cornerstone of the way we do science. And I got fortunate within the Health2030 Genome Center and before in my previous life to work with really brilliant people. I have, however, a slide of conflict of interest to show you. The first one is that back in 2012, we implemented a test. And that's the only time my wife said that I did something useful, because she was seeing me behind a computer all day long, coding for those that are geeks in Perl. Ouch. And not understanding why I was shouting and saying it doesn't work. This has been rolled up worldwide. It's used by a lot of women. It actually enables to, rather than doing a hole into the uterus and getting some samples, some cells to grow, to do directly a blood draw. The second one is a platform that we developed back in 2014, thanks to the Basic Science Fund. And this is really important. We tend to only look at science as implementation. The basic science is the key. It needs to be nurtured, needs to be very questioned in terms of its quality. But this is the fundamental aspect that creates the PD-1, that are the therapy for cancer, or that creating the link RNA as a platform that got bought for a few, actually 1 billion, by Eli Lilly last year. And it was a platform that we transferred to the tech transfer, to the higher company that has been bought by Eli Lilly. And to create that, it was literally 2 PhD students, 1 postdoc, and a pom-pom girl. The last one is a new startup that we started in February, which I talked a bit about earlier. And this one, I hope I'll talk a bit more when we raise the first billion, and I'll come back and reinvest money in Greece, because I think I have to do something in Greece, despite the fact that I'm 50% genetically Greek. Now let me talk about the Genome Center. The Genome Center has 7 fathers and mothers. This is the most complicated stuff. Each and every institution, whenever they put money, they want to control this. And this is actually not a question of control. It's a question of what we do with this infrastructure and how we use it. This has the Polytechnicum in Lausanne, the hospitals, the HUG, the CHUV, and the Inselspital, the university in the western part of Switzerland. Each of them decided to create the Genome Center as a capacity to produce genome at scale for clinical usage. And the first credo is important. We have to be an open platform. This is not for friends and family. We have to be not for profit. The for-profit have their own mandate. This is a government mandate and university mandates. The third, we are not a research institution because you don't want to compete with institutions like the EPFL, the University of Lausanne, and all the others, because they have their research mandate. And we are not a data owner and controller. And this is extremely important, and Effie being here, you can talk ad nauseum about this, because it's really important, because people believe at one stage, because they generate the data, they own the data. We don't own. We are just a messenger, a transporter, and a creator of value. And the use of it is more important than anything else. And the aim for us, and the credo, is really to enable the genomic research and medicine, and try to be the genomic lead. Although in Switzerland, I have to say, we don't like to have heads that goes above the crowd. We are very horizontal in our structure, not too much pyramidal like other places. One thing that I want to show you is that we put these centers with the first and most important part, which is accrediting the service so that it could use for diagnostic. And you would say, but all hospitals are doing that. They treat patients. Well, reverse the point. Every time they do a diagnosis, this is one line of accreditation in their laboratory compendium. When we sequence the human genome once, we can analyze in 50 or hundreds ways, and even ways we have not imagined to do. And this is extremely important because you sequence one, you analyze many. And the fact that you sequence this at what is called an accredited level, that means you can make decisions from a clinical diagnostic, is really important. The second thing is that we need to have a fast turnaround time. You should not wait for a long time. And I give you an example of what is called the diagnostic journey, which is known in rare disease. And we need to also think that this creates quite a lot of data, so we have to be mindful of the resources. There's a lot of people that just in the era of AI thinks that we have immense resource. We don't. Just ask and talk to the government. They try to rather reduce and be more resilient on the use of resources. Now, there are four focuses for the Genome Center: the precision oncology, which I don't talk about today, the virus, and we've been through a pandemic, so everybody knows now what a qPCR, a CT value, and a sequence of SARS-CoV-2 is, and the more Mendelian gene and rare disease and the population. I'm going to talk about the one on the right, starting with the genomic medicine. Now, the diagnostic journey is something that happens for a fraction of the population, despite the fact that all of us have around 50 variants that makes us unique, that neither our mom nor our dad bears. Therefore, we are mutant. We bear variation that have an influence on the trajectory of disease that you might get along the way. This is a bit of a predictive one, and this is something that is very stressful for a lot of people because we can't change anything. And as a good friend of mine who is a human geneticist says, choose wisely your parents. But the truth is that between 5 to 6 years is necessary to put a diagnosis. And sometimes we don't even are able to put one diagnosis. And there is a big stress for the parents. The stress happens even more when the kids are in critically ill situation. And in the US, people have implemented rapid whole genome sequencing for pediatric ICU. This has demonstrated that in 2/3 of the case, you can change the management of the baby and the type of treatment, even if the decision is not to continue to treat, which is also a decision to take, rather than continuing to keep that baby in ICU. This has been done in Sweden, in Australia, in the US. The change in mindset is also important because basically there is an economic aspect, because every day, at least in Switzerland, is about 12,000 Swiss francs of cost. Whereas a rapid whole genome sequencing is about $1,000, let's say 1,500 until you get the return, which means a tenth of the cost. And this is purely the econometric part that people are putting in this. And I don't know what is the value of a human being, to be honest, because I'm not an actuarian for this. What we've set to implement was a rapid turnaround time. We leave everything that is hospital-based to the left, to the hospital. They know their job, and they do as best as they can with their resources the way they want, or they have. We turn this data into a diagnostic, and as you can imagine, we have millions of variants that are different, and we have to sift through this. So we have to have computational tools that sift through that. And the clinicians, and we had an example just in one of the panel, do not have the time to look at this, so we need to bring them the right information. Bringing the right information means the most pertinent. I didn't say the right one, because the right one might be that we don't find anything. And then we go into a research loop, which is a different game. But within, and this is what we did, within 3 to 5 days, and I removed the slide just because I have only 15 minutes, 0, within 5 days, we can return from the time we receive the sample to the diagnosis, the entire cartography of a sick kids, and we can change the management of care. And in 2/3 of the case, and we have only 320, there is no market for this, right? But it's our kids, and our kids are our futures. So in that sense, this is also something which you think about it, the UK have been implementing their infrastructure because of the Genomics England, because their Prime Minister had a kid with a rare disease, and he was personally attached to this. And we have just to think about this being on our side to really think we can be all touched by that. And we need to have the infrastructure to implement this. Now, genomics is one thing of the equations. We are made of DNA, of RNA, but there is protein, there is metabolites, there is a lot of other things. Being able to characterize the digital biosamples that we have into a biobank is as important as having it to a fridge, because it's a digital versions that we can transport in different places. And hence the Swiss Multiomics Center has been created through that stuff. And if you are interested into this, we try to set that at scale. We tested that, we benchmarked that with a case of around 250 cases of kids that had a very important metabolic disease. We published a paper. And that's what professors are after. But when you have more than 200, my grandma said your paper does not count. You don't bring that in the afterlife. So, but it's important for your career though, right? And it's important to continue because that's how open science works. And these research can turn into a treatment. And this is Casey that has received the first prime editing version and modification of her genome for a disease that was incurable up a few months ago. Now let's see how this goes in the long term, and we had a talk a few days ago about how this is. So this is for rare disease and importance for using this in our health and environment and our care. Now, I'm seeing the time. The Genome of Switzerland is a project that is part of Genome of Europe. Now, this is Europe, and I'm in Switzerland. We are not part of Europe. We are genetically part of Europe somehow because people go in vacation and make babies on the beach while listening to some sirtaki. The Brits, the Iceland, they have done their job. They have sequenced their population. Europe has not. And 38% of the population in Switzerland are foreigners. So when we sequence the genome of Switzerland, we are sequencing literally Europe. It's a mini Europe. We have people from Greece, from Italy, from Portugal, from everywhere. And it's an important part and contribution that we have to do to the entire European community and beyond, North Africa and others. We have set to do that for 15,000 people. And you'd say, that's a drop in the lake. Actually, in the Lake of Geneva. But it's not that much. It's actually not a lot, but it's already the right fraction from the OECD of the population of Switzerland with respect to the rest of Europe. And we want to do that at clinical grade, so each and every of these person would benefit from that. Now, here is a question I have. Out of all of you, how many variants do you think are actionable? That means we could use for care. Is it 5% of the variants? 5% of the population that have a variant that we could use clinically? 20% or 100%? Who would say 5%? 50%? 100%? Nobody, huh? 100%. All of you. All of you have at least 4 variants for which we should not use a drug or change the dosage of the drug. This is actually what is the most important part. This is the part that we are not really using the technology for because we have not implemented it at scale. These 1,000 people that we did in the first program for the Genome of Switzerland, all of them have a benefit in terms of care for the usage of a drug. And drugs that are used on a daily basis across the entire Switzerland and Europe. And this is really important. So the pharmacology-based prediction, and we had a session just before on digital literacy, which we need to also explain to people that it's not only bad, it's actually good, is a change of management of care. And the genome is at the heart of this. Doing it ethically, not leaving anybody behind, due to socioeconomics and others, is essential. And that's also giving the right treatment to the right patient, which is the motto of most of the pharmaceutical companies, and I've been into these 20 years ago, is actually kind of something we can do now with the technology we have. And with that, I thank you for your attention. The Genome Center, I'm just the pom-pom girl presenting in front of you. The people that do the jobs are the people here that incredibly implemented a clinical grade 4-care genomics infrastructure for Switzerland that are used and in use for everyone. Thank you for your attention.